right, let's get it cracking. Let's get it cracking. Let me make sure my Bluetooth is not doing anything there. Okay. What is that? It says Mike, New York, McFall. Okay, when folks getting in here, you see the video is titled, Would You Support Red Flag Laws? And we're going in that direction because when it comes to the Second Amendment, we understand the phrase shall not be infringed upon. There's no way to promote red flag laws or to enforce red flag laws without some form of infringement. So we're going to be asking, would you support some form of red flag laws? Now, what is a red flag law? Something that is obvious, something that looks obviously wrong. Doesn't have to be wrong, but it looks wrong, such as in New York, or not better yet, in southern Texas, where you got an 18-year-old showing up to purchase multiple ARs, thousands of rounds of ammunition, costing literally thousands of dollars soon after turning 18. That's something that is out of the ordinary. Would you support any law that at least allowed you to ask questions, make phone calls, potentially delay the purchase when something seems obviously out of the ordinary on someone who is otherwise 100% legal? This kid in southern Texas did not have any criminal law, any criminal background at all. Nothing in his jacket that would have prevented him from purchasing a firearm. But yet he does something that is clearly out of the ordinary. This is what I mean. Would you support red flag laws from a standpoint like that? I get the shall not be infringed upon part of the Second Amendment. There is absolutely no way impossible that you can enforce red flag laws without a little bit of infringement. So would you support that? Those Texas cops were all cowards. Okay. It's looking that way. It's looking that way. Raise the age, says Annette. That's also looking like it may be a possibility. And folks, keep in mind, after the Parkland shooting in Florida, a Republican state, a gun-friendly state like Florida, they actually passed a law to raise the minimum age to 21. The NRA dropped the A rating for the state of Florida down to a C, simply from raising the age from 18 to 21. So that happened, I believe, in 2017. Technically, an amendment means it can be changed or repealed. That is true. That is absolutely true. But the Second Amendment is going to be a very challenging one to make any changes to. And let's just be real. I understand when it comes to the liberal side of the aisle, the NRA is the boogeyman. The NRA to the left is what Fauci is to the right. However, without the NRA, you probably would have had some slight alterations to the Second Amendment. I just gave you a perfect example. The state of Florida simply raised the age of purchasing long rifles from 18 to 21, and the NRA dropped their rating from an A to a C. The NRA is a big player in the Second Amendment. Buckeye Girl 16 says they will never change it. I'm seeing some cracks, and that's why the question I'm posing to you folks, and the box is open as usual. The question I'm posing to you folks is, would you support yourself, not the Republican Party? I understand my audience is primarily MAGA. That's who I prefer talking to. I make that clear on every broadcast. Would you, as a Republican Second Amendment supporting citizen, would you support some form of red flag laws? And what I mean by red flag laws is when a legal, law-abiding citizen makes a purchase that looks incredibly unusual, such as a guy who just turned 18 buying multiple long rifles, thousands of rounds of ammunition, and multiple magazines. He has a 100% legal ability to make that purchase, but it's out of the ordinary. Should you be able to ask questions? Now, keep in mind, there is no way to ask him questions without potentially infringing on his Second Amendment rights. That's the question we're asking. As a legal, law-abiding, concealed carry or open carry, however you maintain your weapon, as a citizen that has the right to carry a weapon, that abides by the law, that supports the Second Amendment, would you support red flag laws on top of all that? Not to be infringed, says Charles. So the answer is no. Looks like Vince is also saying, leave the Second Amendment alone. Let me hold my tablet up so I can see your names better. Okay. Yes, sir. I would support that, says. But okay, most of the folks are saying no, though. Jesus Christ is the truth. Reach out. Nothing but respect. Nothing wrong with that, Gavin, but Jesus Christ is not going to stop mass shootings. He has received a lot of prayers, a lot of thoughts, and this is still happening, including what we know that took place in the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Once again, a pro-gun state just last night or just yesterday evening. They paid the representatives to not change the gun laws. And that's unfortunate. No one should be paid to enact or prevent legislation, but I do agree you may have a point there. Sadly, the more strict gun laws have come from Republican presidents. Is that true? The most strict gun laws in the country? Because obviously the liberals are the ones that get hammered on that. You're suggesting that the most strict gun laws have come from Republican presidents. Is that true? You know something? Let me say this in regards to that comment. And like I said, folks, the box is open. In regards to Republican presidents passing the most strict gun laws, I'm not aware if that's true, but if it is, it would make more sense because the Republican presidents would be more likely to get some form of trust from two-way supporters. Most two-way supporters are right-wing. Anytime the left even gets elected, they expect them to be horrible on that. Whereas Trump made comments about infringing on Second Amendment rights. I believe, did he not ban bump stocks entirely? He talked about reduced magazines. He talked about not needing the AR. So I can understand why Republicans might be more successful at doing it. Just like if you wanted to impose some limitations on the LGBT community, whether it's being taught in schools or whatever, chances are a liberal would have more of a successful path to place those limitations than a Republican. Because the LGBT community automatically is going to be adverse to the Republican Party, just like the 2A community has an adverse viewpoint of the Democratic Party. So it makes sense. Who cares about bump stocks? Say, shall not be infringed upon. You may be a concealed carrier that does not give a shit about 50 calibers. You may never use one, but do you want it to be affected? Just because you're not using bump stocks does not mean someone else is not. Shall not be infringed upon. That's all I'm saying. Don't be willing to concede because it's Trump. Would you have conceded bump stocks under President Obama? That's all I'm saying. If you're defending the amendment, defending your right to have a firearm and protect yourself, do not change your mind because it's Trump as opposed to Obama. Because I'm fairly certain with my particular audience, if Biden or Obama talked about banning bump stocks, it would have been viewed differently than Trump. Let's just be real about it. What well-regulated militia are you a member of? None. I'm a solo artist. We keeping all guns, said Ronald Knowles. You know, and you have a right to do so. I'm just simply asking for the sake of the video, for the sake of the broadcast, for the sake of this live, would you support red flag laws? Here's a perfect example. We took the kid, or we view what happened with that child in southern Texas. I guess he's 18, so he's an adult. By the way, tap the screen. It's hundreds of you in here. I need 5,000 likes. You guys can make that happen. The assailant in southern Texas, 18 years of age, spends thousands of dollars, buys a lot of equipment. Where I come from, in Chicago, there are a lot of nefarious characters, for lack of a better term, gangbangers, drug dealers, whatever you want to call it, that want firearms, but because of their lifestyle, because of prior felonies, they cannot purchase them. And because of the laws in Chicago, they simply cannot get the firearm they want. So they will find somebody who has no criminal record, someone who has never been on the wrong side of the law, to go to Indiana, which is only a 5 or 10 mile drive away. They can purchase the firearms there, take the money from the drug dealer or the gangbanger. You hand it over. They go over there, buy what they need, and come back, and then they get a stipend for making the purchase. Obviously, the legal gun owner becomes illegal when he gets involved in a criminal exchange of guns to a criminal like that. But as long as he doesn't get caught, he's still considered a legal gun owner. That's what I would have suspected. when an 18-year-old shows up with thousands of dollars wanting multiple long rifles and thousands of rounds? Why would an 18-year-old be buying all this shit? Now, it obviously did not apply in that case in Texas, but the problem is we cannot even ask questions legally to find out. That is what I'm asking. Would you support laws that make it so that you can question or delay a legal, law-abiding citizen from instantly getting their purchase when they're doing something that looks completely out of the ordinary? An 18-year-old, a few days after turning 18, shows up with thousands of dollars like he's been dreaming of owning multiple rifles. That looks out of the ordinary. Should you not be allowed to ask any questions at all? That is already in place, says, it's not in place everywhere. It's not in place everywhere. Absolutely, says Melissa. Yeah, regulation of ammo would help a shit ton. How would you regulate the sale of ammo? I get what you're saying, but I mean, I guess, well, you can purchase ammunition nationally, right? If you live in one state, can you not have ammunition sent from another state? I'm just asking. Now, I carry, but I don't get this deep into it. That's why I come to this audience, because a lot of times I indeed can be educated. Name like Grim Veteran. Most likely I'm about to be educated. Grim Veteran, how are you doing this afternoon or this morning?
I just I'm talking about the red flag laws. Okay, I think it's too broad of a stroke to paint. There's too many what ifs in that equation. You know,
True.
like
I can see that. Well, how about if, as opposed to just giving it a broad brush, how about they have bullet points and list what qualifies as a legitimate red flag question or a legitimate red flag inquiry?
well, and I would want to know, well, who's deciding what is a questionable purchase, and
That would come from
is
the
it politically
legislators.
motivated? If it is it politically motivated too? That's another big problem we have in this country, in all kinds of aspects. Is there's a lot of things with cancel culture that are politically motivated that has nothing to do with the actual topic. You know what I mean?
100% agree with you. I would say this in regards to your question of how would you be able to decide what's red flag. This is where you first find out if both the right and the left could agree that we're willing to even take on red flag in the beginning. Okay, if they agree that we're willing to entertain red flag laws, then you have members from the right and members from the left sit down at a table, and then they can present what they think is a considerable or legitimate question to ask. And if they all agree, then you can make bullet points. And that way, at the end of the day, it's going to be politically motivated. I get your point on that. But if you got 7 or 8 right wingers, 7 or 8 left wing senators, or whatever legislators you want to use, members of Congress or whatever, they sit down both and hash out what they think is legitimate. Like I just pointed out, if you're 18 and you show up to buy multiple purchases worth thousands of dollars. Where I come from in Chicago, my first thought is some gangbanger with a bunch of money don't got to you, and he's trying to get you to make purchases for him. And you can
Yeah.
sit down and present that at the table in front of Republicans, and if light bulbs come on in their head, maybe they'll be willing to say, okay, yeah, that's a legitimate point. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, and I heard you talking about people running over to Illinois. They find somebody who may not have a criminal record. Well, that person is setting themselves up to go to prison.
True.
Because if you're not doing a certificate of transfer, you're not covering your own butt. You know what I mean? I sold an M4 to my wife's uncle. Okay, he's an Army Ranger. I was in Air Force Special Operations. Okay, we're family. I still drew up a certificate of transfer that we both signed just to cover my ass. You know what I mean? That's the case, you know?
Yeah, but the thing about it is, like you just said, you did that to cover your ass. At the end of the day, you know you did not have to do that. You just wanted to cross every T and dot every I.
Yeah, you don't have to, but you're running a huge risk if you're doing one of these parking lot transfers at a gun show. You know what I mean? Like you're out in the parking lot and somebody's selling you something. You're just running a huge risk, and it's not a risk I'm willing to take. No way, you know?
Yeah. But everybody, I'll say this, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of you. I assume you're a responsible citizen, but there are a lot of folks out there that have their price. And if you offer them enough money, okay, let's say you write up your certificate of transfer, and a guy puts another $5,000 down in the trunk of the car. We don't need that, do we? There's a lot of citizens that would be like, okay, no, we don't need that. So it depends on each individual.
Mm-hmm. The other thing about the red flags that I don't like, and I can't remember what state it is. I want to say it happened a few times in Virginia, I think,
Okay.
where a woman is pissed off because he's out banging somebody else, and then she makes these accusations, and you know what I mean? It
A
happened a
woman will
couple
get you
times
every
in one
time.
state, and I'm like, ooh, I ain't playing that game because you
Yeah.
know what? You
I
know,
always say, not to get too far off topic, but I always say if you're out in the street running capers, don't ever tell your woman. But go ahead.
I hear you. I hear you, man.
Because
Um,
when you guys break up, if she gets mad at you, you can expect that shit to be handed to the right authorities.
you bet your ass it will be.
Yeah.
No, but I don't know age 21. Man, I don't know how I feel about that because like it is an infringement on the second. All right.
Give
Um,
what is okay, give me a quick summary. H21. Explain that.
well, uh, what do you mean? Like
What?
bumping the age up?
No, oh, you mean the age limit from 18 to 21. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Do you support that?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm kind of conflicted on it because it is an infringement on the second.
Okay.
But
Let me give you my
at the same time, I believe that the populace in general of 18-year-olds in America today are not nearly as mature in their mindset that they used to be, you know?
that is true. That is
Um,
true.
and it's a blanket statement too. It's not true for all 18-year-olds, but if you look at maybe what these damn phones and all the apps and
Yeah.
everything have done to people, what it's actually done is it's disconnected people not only from reality, but it's disconnected them from each other. You know what I mean? Like
I
I
agree.
never I never had this shit whenever I was 18 years old, you know, and as a result of that, I knew people more on a personal level, which
Yeah.
was why it was different in the early 90s. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with that. And let me give you my spiel on this. And I am obviously being a liberal, but even as a Second Amendment supporting gun owner myself, I support raising the age for this reason. When you hear the phrase, nothing stops a bad guy with a gun but a good guy with a gun. And I look at who represents the good guys. It's generally homeowners, business owners, or shop owners, folks who own vehicles trying to prevent a carjacking, or folks who are going about their way to work back and forth. These are the folks you tend to hear that use a gun in self defense. When you think about the offensive crowd, it's folks under 25, the ones who are committing murders, or the folks who are doing drive-by criminals, gangbangers, or even privileged kids going and shooting up schools. It is the younger crowd, the ones that would be, the age would go above them. If you went to 21, 22, or whatever age bracket you would raise it up to, you would be taken up because all of the murders are happening from that younger crowd. Those are the ones who
Yeah.
are committing most of the offensive acts with firearms. But go ahead.
No, I was just listening to you. I agree with you 100%. It's that age group. So, I mean, in a way, I would support jumping the age, you know, on long rifles, you know. But then again, I'm a constitutionalist. I like the Constitution the way it is, you know, and I think that we need to start looking at maybe the mental health aspect of things versus cutting fat off of the Constitution.
Well, I'm gonna have to move it on soon, but I'll give you the last
Yeah,
word. But
you're
here's
good.
my spiel on the Constitution. We know without a shadow of a doubt that the Constitution has been wrong on many cases. That's why they keep amending it. But I just think that when you look at the folks who are committing the murders, and we leave it as is, when really the my cold dead hands crowd and shall not be infringed upon crowd, even those folks who are suggesting that, they're over 18, they're over 21.
Yeah.
The folks who are truly protesting to maintain their Second Amendment rights, they're over 21. So if you don't want your Second Amendment rights infringed upon, and they raise the rules from 18 to 21, it's not going to touch you at all.
Yeah.
Even the crowd that's bitching, it's not the crowd that's complaining the most, saying don't mess with our rights, they will be totally unaffected. I'll give you the last word. Go ahead.
Yeah, man, I'll leave you with this. It's a nice conversation. I'm gonna give you a follow, but I will say
Appreciate that.
I will say this. They handed me an M4 and a Saw 249 when I was 18 years old when I was in multicam. Okay. I'm 47 years old.
You also had to show proficiency in using that weapon, right? And you couldn't
Yeah,
just go off the base, and you couldn't just carry that into a Walgreens or
oh,
something.
no, we're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, when I'm 47 years old, I don't want somebody telling me that I can't. I own an M4 right now. I'm not going to let somebody tell me I can't own that whenever I carried it for you.
Right.
Know?
And that's fine. But like I said, when you got that M4, you had to show proficiency. You weren't sitting in the basement playing Atari and just ordered one from Sears Roebuck and it came in your house and you all of a sudden had an M4. You had to show that you could use that.
They don't sell them at Sears anymore, man. I hear you, though. I hear you. Hey, have a good day.
Right. Hey, you too. You too. Thank you. Appreciate that. No, and for that caller, I use Sears. I knew that was something he could relate to. Obviously, Sears, Montgomery Ward's, J.C. Penney's even is starting to. We understand that's back in the day. Okay, going on to the next. Punky Root. That's an interesting name. Lexington. That every time. I wish I was still. Okay, Punky Root. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Let me see if I can fix my camera here.
Okay, fair enough. And by the way, folks, when you come on the live, you do not necessarily have to have your camera on. We do entertain all conversation. But Punky Root, what's on your mind this afternoon or this morning?
Well, I was just thinking, I was listening to y'all talking. So many people go back to, oh, well, this is how it was when I was this age and that age. And I was in Thomas Bishop's live last night, and we were talking about this, and it's the 16 and 18-year-olds that were fighting in the wars 200 years ago. They are well advanced from the 16 to 18-year-olds we have today. I think we can all admit that.
And to defend the last caller, he did say the same thing.
Yeah, and then to be a constitutionalist, it says well-regulated militia, and people get twisted there thinking that we need to be regulated on our armament, this, that, and the other. Now, I honestly believe that law-abiding citizens should have every right to buy whatever they want, and I honestly believe the regulated militia should be well-trained. The training is what should really be enforced, the education of people with guns. Because if nothing else, if we take away all school shootings and mass shootings, this, that, and the other, if we can eliminate Susie's soccer mom from buying a pistol and putting it in her purse and setting it down, and now one kid's done grabbed it and off the other youngin', if we can eliminate stuff like that, then that's a win. I also put it out there, and I don't know how strongly I feel about it, but if it's your constitutional right, it is attached to your citizenship, then we should eliminate person-to-person sales, because it's not on you to sell me my Second Amendment right without doing any kind of a check. The rights you have attached to your Second Amendment rights should be attached to your citizenship, and mine should be attached to my citizenship.
So would you be against citizen-to-citizen sale of firearms?
Without proper background checks and being able to and I know some states have it, but we really need to enforce serial number exchanges. Because if you sell me a firearm and you didn't do a background check and then I go use it in a crime, honestly, you're an accessory because you didn't do your due diligence.
Okay. Now, if I'm correct, in a lot of states, you do not have to tell the government what you own at all. You don't have to register a firearm at all, right? Like they don't have to know you have it.
Right. They don't, and it gets even grayer when you start talking about ghost guns.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gets even grayer, and that is a problem. That is a real problem, and we really need to get in front of that before that becomes the main weapons used in these shootings. Because if
How
you go
can
back,
you? How can you?
honestly, it would have to be a strong regulation on what makes that firearm go from paperweight to weapon. The firing pin and the trigger.
That could be very difficult. I mean, because if you whatever you're making the firearm out of, polymer, plastic, or whatever, could you not make a firing pin out of plastic as well? Something that strikes the cap on the back of a bullet. Does that have to be metal?
Well, and here's my thing with that. You most likely, I'm not going to put it past, the people that are very good at these things, but I would honestly say with the amount of heat, it would be the equivalent of screwing an oil filter on the end of your muzzle and using it as a silencer. Yeah, it might work the first time, but that fourth shot, everybody heard it.
Okay, fair enough.
So
Okay. I get your point. And I do agree with you that self-made firearms will eventually become a problem, whether or not the Second Amendment is infringed on. They're going to develop that area of technology, regardless
right.
if the Second Amendment is taken away or not. That's coming.
Right. And then when you look at it, is it regulation? And we are there again, Second Amendment, well regulated. The regulation is not an infringement. The regulation is not an infringement. Because when the NRA and the Republicans in the 60s pushed for age restrictions, it was a regulation, not an infringement. So raising it to 21 would there again be an adjustment to the regulation, not an infringement.
So what about yourself? Would you support raising the age from a federal standpoint?
From a federal standpoint, I would say not just firearms, but I don't want to send kids to die in wars overseas at 18. I would move selective service. If it was left to me personally, I would move selective service. I wouldn't be against moving the voting. All of it, everything, drinking, cigarettes. You can't buy some smokes, but you can go die for your country. I think that's a little messed up. And I wouldn't be against raising all of it, because if we honestly look around, man, I see way more island boys than I do anything else when I look at teenagers.
You see way more island boys? I don't get that.
Island boys, the white kids from Florida with the bananas in their hair. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. I see way more people out here. There's way more teenagers trying to be Tekashi 6ix9ine-ish.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
there's a lot of fake hard. They think they know what they're doing, and I will say this, and I'm working on it in my own little video here on TikTok to try to word it just right. But one thing I can say, Gen X is probably the coolest generation out there, hands down, the coolest generation out there. But at the same time, they are absolutely the worst parents on the planet.
Well, to some degree, like what the last caller was talking about, and I agree with the last caller 100% in saying that the 18 to 20-year-old crowd of today were nowhere near as mature as we were back in our day. I mean, most of us, I started doing jobs at 14. I worked paper routes in neighborhood jobs. I worked at Burger King when I was 16. Nowadays, they don't get those responsibilities till later in life. I mean, I was already quite familiar with taking a city bus and independent on a lot of different levels. I remember being 10 years old. I would go fishing and I would bring the fish home, gut them, take them out, and actually prepare fillet fish. You don't trust kids to do stuff like we used to do. I mean, you hear people talking about kids in the back of a pickup truck or all piled in the back of a fish.
Yeah. I can remember as a young child, standing on the front seat with my hands on a metal dashboard riding to Walmart. You know what I mean? And this is because the vehicle I was in was produced before Nader's Raiders put seatbelts in these things.
Yeah, when I was a kid, just for shits and giggles, for laughs, when I was a kid, first of all, we sat in the front seat. There was no car seats. We sat in the front seat. And
right.
you know what the seatbelt was? My mom's hand. If she stepped on the brakes, she would swing her hand over to prevent you from going forward and hitting the dashboard. It's a whole different world now.
And you learn how to move your head before you caught a nail right in the side of the face. That's what you learn to do.
It's a whole different world, but I do agree with that. I do agree with that. All right, well, let me move it on, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
All right, have a
Come
good
on
one.
back through anytime. All right, Funky. It's real good having you. Okay, let me look in here real quick. Are those all requests? Holy okay. No, never mind. All right, looking at the kids need mandatory military. What is this, Israel? We have a fairly significant military personnel, and it's an all volunteer army. You want 300 out of 330 million, all of our offspring to be mandatory. You think we have conflicts now? You think we have a military budget that's too high now? If every single American reaching the age of maturity had to have military experience, shit, what would the military budget be? I mean, for real, that would be insane. What does this say? It's Nader's Raiders is single-handedly responsible for saving more Americans' lives than any other American. I don't know the story of Nader's Raiders. Like I said, I love talking to an opposing audience. And by the way, I make it clear this is a MAGA-friendly room. That's my preferred audience. I learn a lot from you guys. I do learn a lot as someone with a liberal background. I do. Because if you watch CNN or MSNBC, you're watching news that's tailored to a specific agenda. So a lot of shit I don't hear about. So talking to you guys really helps out. The story of Nader's Raiders. Can somebody give me a quick summary on what that is? I've never heard that. Mandatory is not necessary unless we are being pulled to the max. Well, I guess unless we're dealing with a really tough enemy or adversary, I don't know if I'd be a fan of mandatory military enlistment for all Americans reaching the age of maturity. That seems a bit much. Okay, let me move on to, looks like Melissa. You've never spoke before, Melissa, but you are welcome to the program. How are you doing this afternoon?
Good. How are you?
Very well.
I just want to put my 2 cents in as a mom and somebody that's for guns if they're in the right hands. My 18-year-old son is in week 4 of Navy nuke boot camp. My older boys, I have a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old, they've all been born, raised around guns, hunting. Not one of them have ever went out with an assault rifle to hunt. And to give an 18-year-old 1, let alone 2 assault rifles with that much ammo and not have somebody look twice is disturbing. And I totally am for the Second Amendment. But just like you guys just stated, times have changed. So does regulations.
Yeah, and see, that's the problem. Just to interject real quick, I think that is the problem, is that the way the Constitution was written, 1787 or whenever the hell it was adopted back then, is that it's kind of like the Bible, where we wanted to stay the same and not evolve, even though the country in every single level, from every single aspect of this nation, we have evolved. But go ahead.
Yeah, and you just nailed it, because we're not living in yesterday's world. What we were able to do when we were younger, I'm 39, so what we were able to do when we were younger, you can't do anymore. So the regulations need to change. They're absolutely, maybe a gun registry that they have to register annually. And if they don't register it annually or take their guns for an inspection annually, then there's maybe some sort of repercussion. And if they do it more than once, they have to go in front of a judge. Something has to be done, because I would never, and no one else should ever hand that kind of weapon. And all mass shootings have been done by young kids. So why are we giving them, we're pretty much handing them the gun. And if we put regulations or red flags in place, we're at least trying to do something. And if anyone doesn't, everyone, I don't care what side you're on, doesn't agree to that, then we all need to look in the eyes of every one of the mothers that have lost their kids. And we wouldn't be able to do that. No one could.
It would be tough.
You can't even rent a car until you're 25. You don't even get a break or your own insurance policy till you're 25. You can't go into a club or a casino till you're 21. So why are we taking, and none of them things kill a large group of people, but this does. So why are we not putting the same regulations as we do to renting cars, all of the things that you have to be a certain age?
Well, here's the thing I would propose. Now, from the right, I understand if you're on the right, conservative Republicans, you don't want the Second Amendment touched at all, and that's fine. That's part of the debate. But on the right, they believe it's potentially mental health. Now, I guess I would use your angle, but I would say it this way: from the age of 18 to 21, it should be obvious that your mental health improves. You do not have the same mental health at 18 that you will at
Absolutely.
21. Certainly in terms of maturity. When you're 18, you're potentially still in high school hanging around. What's in high school? 14, 15, 16, 17, and
Yep.
18-year-olds.
Yep.
By the time you're 21, you've been in the job market for 3 years. You're certainly not hanging around at that point, it's illegal to be hanging around 14, 15-year-olds. So you've certainly matured a lot. I had my first college degree by the time I was 21. So
Absolutely.
so if the right wing wants to suggest that they don't want the Second Amendment infringed upon, but they are in favor of potentially looking at it from a mental health aspect, 18 to 21 is a mental health issue. It's pretty
Yeah.
easy to word that, but I'll let you go. Go ahead and
And
continue.
lastly, an 18-year-old hasn't had the opportunity nor the time yet to become a criminal or not. Um, and we all know that between 18 and 21, that's pretty much the fork in the road where you either decide what path you're taking in life. So there's a lot of maturing that goes on between 18 to 21. So let's give these kids opportunity to decide what path they're going to take in life and if they're going to become criminals or law-abiding citizens, and will eliminate a lot of the issues. So,
Well, but I guess at the end of the day, we know liberals believe it's a gun. So because you can see from the legislation that liberals have passed in different cities like Chicago and Los Angeles, even if you think the legislation is useless, it's pretty clear what the liberals think is a problem for mass casualty events. When you look at the right wing, though, they're giving you different reasons for why they think it is that are not guns. But when you look at the legislation they're passed, there's nothing there. So the question is, if you think it is mental health, or you think it is parenting or video game, what are you doing to actually address what you think the problem is? Because if you
yeah.
continue handing out firearms, but you don't even address what you think the problem is, how could you not expect this to continue? I'll give you the last word. I'm gonna move it on, but I'll give you the last word, Melissa.
No,
And just talk.
what you just said, I absolutely agree on. We can't be mad because there's mass shootings, but then not want them to make regulations or red flags. You can be right, left, Democrat, Republican. It doesn't matter. These kids are dying out here, and something has to be done. Let's not make it about violating my Second Amendment, and let's make it more about amending, regulating the Second Amendment. Everything in this world, everything in life has to change and evolve, and they need to quit just putting their foot down. Don't touch my Second Amendment. It's more important than that. These are kids' life. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you letting me on, and that's pretty much where I'm at this. Thank you.
Absolutely a pleasure. Come back anytime. Let me. I don't normally do this in the middle of a broadcast, but I gotta skip to a different parking space because I do not want my device to overheat. Okay, looking at the comments, focus on lobbyists, not guns. Well, I do agree that lobbyists. Okay, there we go. I do agree that lobbyists are a huge issue when it comes to politics in general. Both sides are typically doing or passing legislation based on what they're paid from lobbyists. So that's a major problem. There's no way I can disagree with that. Politicians start changing other amendments like search and seizure. Well, and see, here's one of the reasons why it is so difficult to do anything to address the Second Amendment, is because the notion is give an inch, they'll take them out. So I'm not going to give you a millimeter. And as long as we have that aspect or that mindset, there will never be any evolution on the Second Amendment whatsoever. Give an inch, they'll take a mile, so do not even give them a millimeter. Well, I don't know where else you can go with that because, like I said, the right wing, even though they don't believe guns are what's causing the problems, they have other things they do believe is causing the problem. But they're doing nothing to address that stuff because they want to protect the Second Amendment at all costs. Just simply under the right-wing formula, whereas protect the Second Amendment and essentially do nothing for mental health, parenting, video games, or all these other issues that they're mentioning, just under the right-wing formula, you'd have to suggest this is guaranteed to keep happening because they have a do-nothing approach. Hopefully that changes. There is some cracks being shown from the right-wing side of the aisle, such as raising the age from 18 to 21, and some folks are starting to say that they would suggest red flag laws, which is what this piece is about. And I see, what is it, young slab, as you said, video games have nothing to do with it. I tend to agree. But I believe there was a senator or a congressman that said yesterday he's blaming rap music. He's blaming rap music and saying that rap music has something to do with it, which seems odd to me because rap music is currently the #1 genre of music worldwide. You can hear rap in every language. I've even heard Middle Easterners rapping. I mean, I didn't understand what the hell they were saying, but I could hear the bass. I could hear the beat. I could understand the flow, and it's everywhere. So you have a lot of countries that have rap music, have violent video games, have kids with mental health problems, and they're not shooting each other up. So what is it about America that is so unique? Looking at here, let me see. All rappers have guns posted online. That's not true. You think Will Smith? He would have shot Chris Rock. If Will Smith had an AK or an AR or an SKS, we would not have Chris Rock. He wouldn't have smacked him. Will Smith used another weapon. Remember that. If they can't get guns, they'll use something else. Will Smith had to use his hand because he's a rapper without a gun. Okay, Kid Cudi don't have guns. Most rappers don't have guns posted online. I'm making a joke to literally respond to something that is humorous. LL Cool J and a whole bunch of other rappers are not known for posting guns online. No, bail reform soft on crime and criminals. Anyone caught with an illegal firearm, automatic 10 years. They did that in Chicago. Chicago has some pretty damn tough penalties for gun crimes. The penalties alone are not working. They're just not. I mean, there are plenty of places where you can get years in prison just for being caught with a bullet. You don't even need the damn pistol, just a bullet. It's not working alone. There has to be more. You can't just do that. Fatherless Homes says, sell a child of God. There's no way you can fix that. You can't make a couple stay together. That has passed. That's 1950s type shit, where you forcing one of the people to stay in the house even though they don't want to be there. There's no way you're going to be able to repair that. I think that era is gone. Let's see here. Vaz 37. I think this might once. We'll see. Why have gun-free zones? Hang on a second, Vaz. WM Reynolds said, why have gun-free zones? Would you be okay with people? Hang on, Vaz. Would you be okay with somebody bringing an AR-15 into a bar? You're on the dance floor in the club where everybody drinking and somebody walks by and they got pistols on their hip. You want no gun-free zones? Vaz, good afternoon.
Hey, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. What's up?
Yeah. Oh, man, I don't really. The gun-free zones, that is a good thing, though. That's true, because you want areas where at least you can walk your kids. But, you could be on the outside. Like, I think pretty much like the parks, like in these, like our state is, you can keep it on your holster. You don't have to have a license and all that, but you can't bring them in the parks. You know what I'm saying?
And I would say this, in regards to what you're saying, coming from Chicago myself, you know how many folks have lost their lives on the basketball court because they fouled somebody, got into a fight, and one of the dudes had a pistol in his backpack with his shoes or something. If you turn city parks, which in a lot of states, city parks are not gun-free zones. Yeah, you're right. You're there with your family, you're there with your kids, your daughter's on the sliding board. You do not want a society where you can buy firearms with no firearms training to give people guns in that environment. It just leads for chaos. But go ahead.
Yeah, but I think with the gun situation, period, and going to what you're saying with the lobbyists, the politicians, a lot of them not really caring, the Democrats acting dumb, the Republicans acting like they just don't give a damn. I think we're for the next, I would say for the next 10 years, where we're at is pretty much where we're at because nothing's going to get done. And it's sad. And I always say there are certain realities that you just going to have to learn to accept. And right now, one of them,
Bingo. Yep. Yep.
nothing's getting ready to get done. And we just got to learn that we've got some old people that believe, yeah, you got to do this, and true, and there's a lot of truth to the Second Amendment as far as it's not supposed to be touched. And I think I remember me and you was talking the last time I was on here, and I was like, man, you're supposed to know the history. And you said, look, man, I'm on here. We learn from each other. I learn stuff, and I was like, you're right. And I think we do have to look back and be like, look, the Second Amendment was made because of the Revolutionary War, because the British came, they would come in there and take their guns. They said this will never happen again. We're going to be armed. The citizens will be armed, and we'll be able to fight if ever we need to fight. That's what it's all about. And
Well,
if
let
we
me
need to,
let me say this. Let me respond by that. You talk about the Revolutionary War and things like that. Savvy Eagle, I appreciate that. Thanks for that crown. I often because anytime we talk about the Second Amendment, folks bring up tyranny, Hitler, Stalin. We don't want the country to be like that. And then when I have my conversations involving, let's say, race and cops, you guys
uh,
need to get over. You guys need to get over what happened hundreds of years ago. We're in a post-racial America. Why the hell doesn't that apply when it comes to Second Amendment arguments? Because what
it,
the Second Amendment, the folks who defend the Second Amendment, a lot of that stuff is based on things that have not happened in this country in hundreds of years. But they
right.
keep bringing it up. I don't understand that. Go ahead.
Well, the Second Amendment is a right, and it's not something that's, it's one of those things that, it's like what God gives you. Well, I'm not saying they're gods, but it's just one of them things that it is not to be taken away. This is for you. This is our gift for you. And one through 10 is just like the 10 Commandments in the Bible. It's just like that's basically how they mirrored the Bill of Rights was to the 10 Commandments of the Bible. And these are the things that we can assure you, if you have these things, you always stand a chance against tyranny.
And let me respond to that. I think that, with all due respect, I hear that from a lot of folks, and I think that is the biggest farce I've ever heard. And here's what I mean. Folks always talk about Americans having firearms protects us from tyranny. But look at the country. When you hear tyranny, people bring up Hitler and Stalin and Slobodan Milosevic and Saddam Hussein. Look at our country. We've had the Second Amendment since the very beginning, yet women didn't get the right to vote till 1920. You already know what happened to African Americans from slavery to Jim Crow. Look at what happened to the Native Americans. We have been tyrannical most of our history, even though the Second Amendment existed. So, and that's what you notice. They don't want to they bring up Hitler and Stalin, even
Yeah.
though most of the examples of tyranny are
It's
right here at
academic.
home. Bring
Yeah.
up George Washington. Bring up, you
Yeah.
don't need to bring up Hitler. You can bring it up here. So the question is, why would any American believe that a firearm protects you from tyranny when the Second Amendment has been around since day one and our country's entire history, up at least until 1964 when the Civil Rights was passed, was tyrannical? It's been happening the whole time you've had the Second Amendment. So why believe it cannot happen?
Because it can. Because it can. That's why.
It's been going on the whole time. We can't have tyranny. We got guns. You've been living in a tyrannical country the whole damn time.
Yeah, I know. But I, man, the uh, it's okay. It takes what to even change the Second Amendment. And here's what you're going to have to get. You're going to have to get 2/3 of the House, the Senate, to even vote on it, to try to change it. Do you know how hard that's going to be? And so if you want to change that, that means you're digging into the Constitution more, and you're doing things you're probably not even supposed to be doing in the first place, which is primarily what is going on around about now. It's doing a lot of things you have no business. But so I just
Well,
say, man, I
I
would
don't
say,
have my. Let me just say this. I don't have my Trump is right hat. I often hold it up when I can think of something that Trump said, because my audience is primarily MAGA, and I'm willing to give Trump credit where he's right. Trump said in 2017, right after Parkland, when his own Senate was telling him we didn't do anything about, and we didn't pass any legislation about guns. He told his own Senate, that's because you guys are afraid of the NRA. And he said, I'm not afraid of them, but you guys are. As long as we have that particular situation, Trump is right about that. As
yeah,
long as
you're
you
right.
have American politicians that are afraid of the NRA, America is going to be ran the way the NRA wants it to be ran. I'll give you the last word. Go ahead.
And I'm gonna go with that and say that's because you have of the people, and a lot of the lot of things move because of the people. The politicians don't have to fear the NRA if the people ain't supporting the NRA. Too many
True.
people support the NRA,
Well,
so the politician has to fear it.
let me just give you a little offshoot of that. Right now, even with Roe versus Wade being about to be overturned, it appears that way.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the polls say about 70% of Americans are in favor of a woman having the right to choose at least somewhere in the first trimester. Yet they're going to overturn the will of the people. So when you said that if the people think a different way, the NRA won't win and the politicians won't listen to the NRA, I'm just going to
Oh
tell you that's
no!
proof that they will.
Oh, wait a minute though. Wait a minute now. Let me go a little deeper because in all of those things, that's a small sector.
But a big law.
It's not a large sector that support the NRA. That's a small little sector. Just like with the abortion, is a small sector based on what? Religion.
Doesn't matter.
I would say
It doesn't matter if the sector
right.
only consists of 5 people. They're getting it done. They're succeeding.
Yes. Yes, and that itself is a mentality that comes from well, you know what? I don't know where it comes from, but it's something in the mind that if when you start to when you say these things, when you say religion and and guns, Bible, when you say these things, I don't care if you got 100 people saying no. If you've got that one, then that's where they're going. And that's what and that's what I see. It's just the religion and the guns. They will not move, and they will push, and they're gonna push, and they're gonna push until they get done. They have been trying to get Roe versus Wade for almost what has it been 30, 40 years. This has been an agenda
Well,
to
they
get
have,
this overturned.
and they have succeeded. Okay,
This
well,
is
I
not
gotta move
new.
it
This
on,
is
man. I gotta move it on.
oh,
Appreciate you coming
okay.
through.
Oh,
All right,
okay,
welcome
okay.
back anytime. That's good call with Vaz. I will just say that throwing a bone at the right wing. It's not just the left that pushes it. I would say the LGBT crowd is another portion of America. That community only represents a very, very tiny fraction of the American populace, and they're getting shit done too. They're changing a lot of our laws to reflect their community, even though they reflect. And I'm pro LGBT all day, every day. But I'm just simply saying they are making a lot of things about the LGBT, even though that represents particularly trans. Now, there, the L in the L, the G, and the B, yeah, there's millions of people. But the trans crowd is a very, very tiny percentage of our population, and they're making headway. So I'm pointing this out because I'm just simply saying when he was talking about small groups of people, if you can get enough sympathy, a small group of people can implement a change, whereas the minority can actually make changes to affect the majority. That's all I'm saying. We don't need religion in our government. Candy coated cyanide. 100% agree, particularly in a nation that is a melting pot where all sorts of religions are here. Because most religions teach you that your God is the only one and true God. I believe, what do they say in Christianity? Thou shalt, what is it? Be aware of false prophets, or thou shalt have no other God before me. So when you have that type of mindset, other religions can sometimes be the enemy. And if they live next door to you, that's going to lead to problems. So I do agree that religion has no place in politics or our legislation. But we know that's not true. They talked about separation of church and state. They gave it lip service, just like all men are created equal. They said some shit, but then started writing laws that were anything but. And we know religion is deeply rooted throughout all of our laws. None of them believe in God. Delmar, ow. Delmar, ouch. I guess we should eat dog and cat food. Eat dog and cat too? Markinson, where is that coming from? Shout out to the Koreans, by the way. They were trying to say the Uvalde shooter was trans. That's how, yeah, and that is true. There were photos floating around of the shooter in down there in whatever the name, Uvalde, whatever the name of that town is, Uvalde. Yeah, and they were trying to say the guy was trans. That is pathetic. That's gross. And fortunately, the news got behind it quickly and said that is not this guy. So whoever done that obviously has an anti-LGBT agenda. Religion is a sham, says Silent M. I don't know if it's a sham or not. I just say keep it to yourself. If you want to believe in a God or a multiple gods or whatever, as long as it's harmless to your neighbors, you can do it all day, every day. It's when you start telling your neighbors how they have to live their lives according to how you believe you should live your life is when it becomes a problem. God bless President Joe Biden. Okay, nothing wrong with that. User 160. He's going to need that come November of 2022 and 2024 because he's in trouble. Worse, our leaders are Luciferian. Oh my God. I hope not. It's crazy that you guys say this type of stuff. My right-wing audience, my MAGA folks, my beloved audience. You guys point out everything from Dr. Fauci to a corrupt CDC. Bill Gates is selling out baby formula and putting babies' lives at risk. And then you say America's the best country on earth. This doesn't match. This does not match. If I don't have a firearm, all of my politicians are going to become tyrannical and take away all my constitutional rights. I got to have a firearm to keep my politicians at bay. But I live in the best country on earth. That does not match. One of those things cannot be. Looking at the comments, love one another. Hopefully we can do that. Yes, bless Brandon's heart. Shout out to the FJB comment. Obviously, when you make a comment like that, you have no desire to bless Joe Biden. Religion has messed up a lot of people. Religion has messed up a lot of people believing something higher than yourself. Well, believing in religion is based on believing in something higher than yourself. But in regards to it messing up a lot of folks, yeah, children. I mean, there's no denying you. And here's something I debated with a right winger not long ago because they were talking about going after Disney because apparently Disney has somewhat of a history of abusing children. And I asked the guy, how about the Catholic Church? How do you feel about it? Well, you realize the history of the Catholic Church? You right wingers that are going after Disney, but you're down with the Catholic Church? I don't get it. I don't get it. The Catholic Church was abusing children when Disney opened in 1971. They were already doing it. So if you got a problem with Disney, but you're down with the Catholic Church, you kind of twisted on that. American exceptionalism erodes with every school shooting. That, I believe, is kind of true. Chris to the North. That I kind of believe that is true because folks always suggest that America's the best country on earth. Everybody wants to come here. They love us. They love our movies. They love our music. They do not love our gun rights. Most of the countries, Australia, New Zealand, now looks like Canada, Norway, these countries that are banning their gun rights, these are democracies. They could vote it back in if they wanted to. I had an Australian on the program a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him all of the questions that we are told here. If you ban guns here, civil war, tyranny, neighbor's going to rise against neighbor, all of the things we say is going to happen here. And I asked him in Australia, have you seen any of that stuff? He said no to all of it, including a rise in stabbings, car bombings, and folks using cars to run over people. He said we don't see any of that. And I asked him, because you can vote, have you guys tried to vote back in your gun rights? And he said, no, we look at America. We see what happens in America on our television screens, and we don't want our kids to go to school through that. So they're actually using us as a model for why they don't want their gun rights back. So if you think that countries are looking at us, they are, but they're not looking at us the way you think they are. Looking at the comments here, and I see somebody said I'm Catholic. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm just simply saying it's a fact that the Catholic religion and children have not coexisted very well. Yes, Disney went to Orlando, Florida in 1971, Rep 8319. Yes. One difference is that Disney was segregated from Florida law. Disney made their own laws, not anymore. Well, the Catholics had a lot of power of making their own laws too. They actually also did the same thing. The Mormons had a lot of independence from law as well. If you give folks power, they tend to abuse it. And it's not just blaming Catholics. Hell, I grew up Baptist. A lot of Baptist preachers abuse their power. You go to a church in some of the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago, and the pastor happens to have 3 Cadillacs and a big-ass house. With power comes corruption. I'm just going to say it like that. Looking at the comments here. Other countries look at our administration as a joke. Have you watched any of their news stations? Norma B, in my opinion, a lot of countries, and when I say, I mean first world countries, I mean, Iraq or Afghanistan, I don't think they're going to like any of our administrations. But I'm talking first world countries, France, the UK, Australia, countries that we consider allies. I think they look at different leaders differently. I don't think Obama, for instance, was disliked by any of our allies. I think all of our allies somewhat favored Obama, with the exception of Israel. With the exception of Israel. But I will say that Trump and Biden, some of them, it's a little bit differently. Trump, obviously, you had countries suggesting that Trump do not even come there. I mean, when he went to London, they had a big-ass blip of him looking like a baby in a diaper. So there are clearly countries that look at certain administrations differently. But good point. Constitution means nothing. That's not true. President 462, that's not true. The Constitution means a lot. I know my church has sad, bad history. We're working to change it. And that's good. That's good, my, what does that say? My corner USA, that's really good. Other countries look at our administration as a joke. Have you, yeah. Okay, looking at the comments, they loved Obama. They loved Obama. He led from behind, Marcus in 09. Well, Trump led in the front. They didn't like him either. So what does that say? I'm a communist with capitalist views. How does that work, Candy Codicil? How can you be a communist with capitalist views? I don't get how that works. Other countries respected Trump. They know Joe is weak and they can walk all over him. You think Russia views Biden as a country, as a president they can walk all over? Do you realize how many Russians are deceased because of what Biden is doing with the Ukrainians? I talk to my favorite audience all the time. My MAGA folks. You guys do not support anything that Biden is doing to help the Ukrainians. So I can tell you one country that does not think that Biden is a pushover, and that is Russia, because he is slaughtering a hell of a There we go. Let me look at my camera went off for a minute. Judgment has come to America. How so? How so? After Clinton banned assault rifles, the rate of mass shootings went down. Look it up, liberal. I agree with that. Clinton banned assault rifles in 1994. That was allowed to expire under the George Bush administration in 2004. And yeah, the numbers went up. You know, I was a young man in the mid-90s, and I do not remember hearing about a lot of mass shootings. From 1994 to 2004, I don't remember hearing about a lot of mass shootings at all in that era. So, and like you mentioned, there was an assault rifles ban. Absolutely 100%, they all see Biden as weak. Look, here's Johnny. When you suggest that somebody sees a leader as weak, it's an opinion. We don't know what any leader sees as anything, because we're not at that level. We're not at that level. But I guarantee Zelensky is probably happier with Biden in office than Trump, because Trump was speaking. Trump did not like the Ukraine one bit. I don't think that Trump would have helped the Ukrainians at all, other than maybe
Uh,
to
Kia ora
wait
ihoa. Hello,
at
my
all.
friend. Hi, so I'm from
Decolonize. What's up?
nothing too crazy. So again, like you talking about banning guns, and you was talking about I'll say I'll say my second point first. No country sees America as weak. We really don't. We don't see Biden as weak. We didn't see Trump as weak. We know America's powerful. We just don't like you.
Where are you from?
I'm from New Zealand.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Yeah,
Why do you believe New Zealanders dislike Americans?
Okay, so New Zealand as a whole, you guys are just really rude tourists. That's why New Zealand doesn't like you. But as a Polynesian Pacific Islander, America has a tendency to fuck with us for nothing. We look at Guam and all of Micronesia, which is considered American property. Samoa the other day just celebrated 6 years of independence from America, even though they're still American Samoa. We can look at Hawaii as another one. We can look at the fact that America was trying to colonize the island nation of Tokelau. Yeah, America just has a tendency to fuck with us for no reason whatsoever.
Let me ask you this question. In regards to some of those Pacific islands you mentioned, like Guam and things like that. You do realize without America, those islands would have been controlled by the Japanese. In fact, we took some of them back from the Japanese.
Yeah. Again, New Zealand's controlled by the British.
But would you rather have been in the hands of the Japanese than Americans?
Concerning the fact a lot of our Pacific islands are now sinking, I don't know. But I do know that we are suffering now because of it. That's what I do know.
Okay. Well, I will say this. I've been to your country. I used to date somebody in Hamilton, so I'm aware. In fact, I got a Waikato shirt at home. So I've been to New Zealand a few times. And I didn't get treated rude. I mean, I was, maybe because I'm African American, I don't know. But they treated me with love, and I had no problem. I should live in Australia, so I used to go.
We all love. We again are all love for people. But so again, like with tourists, tourists can be really annoying, especially American ones, because they're a little bit ignorant. But it's more the fact we see the American flag, we're like, oh fuck, here comes trouble.
Let me ask you this question. Your prime minister, the lady over, what year did she ban guns? Was this 2015? When did you guys have that mass shooting not long?
2019. Again, that was also going to be my other point, was we was talking about guns and stuff. So we recently just had another one the other day.
A mass shooting?
Not a mass shooting, but a shooting. Because I was going to say that, because again, people like to talk about, then the bad guys will get guns. New Zealand has the biggest gang culture in the world. We literally have the biggest gang culture. We have the most gang members per capita in the world.
So let me ask you this. Yeah. How do New Zealanders feel about the gun ban? Do you guys want your guns back?
Some people like, hey, I liked guns, I liked shooting, but I'd say at least 9 out of 10 people were like, even if they didn't like it, could understand why it happened. So we kind of just.
Do you feel? Do you think most New Zealanders feel unsafe now that they?
No, because I'm not even saying my race has been targeted by the New Zealand government. I'm Indigenous. I'm, I'm Polynesian. Our race was illegal 50 years ago.
Okay.
We didn't have guns then either. So people it's okay. The government, even though it has a history of mistreating my people specifically, our government doesn't have a massive history of actively trying to, target and wipe people off the map. Now, the American government does, so I can understand why, say, the Americans would want to keep their arms, and it's been embedded as a right for so long, and there's a massive culture around it, so it's a little bit different. But
let me come at you. Let me come at you from. I'm asking you this stuff because this is what we're told here in America. Yeah. In regards to your government, now that you, as citizens, do not have a right to protect yourselves, do you feel like your government may become tyrannical and oppress all your rights?
Well, the first New Zealand government, the original one, was oppressive and did take away my people's rights. We didn't use guns then. We used this.
I can't. Your background's too dark.
This is a club, and it was a spear, but it broke off.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I have no issue swing. I go hunting with it. I don't use a gun when I go hunting because I'm allowed to buy a hunting rifle. I go into the bush, I trap, and I'll sneak up on a wild boar with a bat.
Wow.
It was a
Okay.
spear, but I hit the shoulder bone, and if you know on hunts pigs, you know the shoulder bone's basically body armor, so it snapped my spear. So I need to
Wow.
carve me a new one.
Okay, you definitely got the primal theme going. Okay, let me ask you this question. When they were talking about banning guns, the gun owners in New Zealand, were they threatening a potential civil war and said that there would be a huge uprising if they took guns away in New Zealand?
No, but they did create an uproar of I don't want to give up my stuff. I bought this, you know, I look after this. But they were still very much, they weren't happy, but they weren't threatening anyone.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So in other words, this kind of has went off without a hitch. What about mass stabbings, or has criminals started using cars to run over people, bombs? Have they found other weapons to kill people?
Well, again, like I was saying earlier, we had the highest gang culture in the world. We had the most gang members per capita. But our gang members have an essence of classiness about them where they will go into a random paddock on a farm and just beat the shit out of each other with their fists. Like shootings, again, like stabbings, they happen. You know, no country's perfect. People get stabbed, not on a massive rate because
have the stabbings increased now that they don't have guns?
On a civilian level, no. I think gang members have kind of been using knives a bit more against each other, but on like a mass where it's like been happening with civilians, not so. No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay. Like I said, folks, and like I said, for you guys listening to this, I'm asking them these questions because I've been debating with the right in America for at least 20 years. And these are the primary things that I'm always told that will take place in America if guns are banned. So anytime I speak to someone from a country where that has happened, I always give them those same talking points and see what is taking place in their country. Which leads me to my... Go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying, these are valid questions that you would, especially when you're talking about, self-defense and, a gun has only one use, and that is to harm and kill someone, whether or not that person deserves it or not. That's still its one purpose.
Okay.
So your questions are pretty valid.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. All right, well, look, I got to move it on, man. You've been really good talking to. I would love to hear back from you. I'm on here, folks, for you guys who do know, 7 p.m. Central when I'm actually on here from in my little made-up studio or whatever. But decolonize, what does that say? Decolonize nation, or what is it? I don't see the last half of your name.
Decolonize native NZ.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I used to hang out with you guys a lot when I was in when I lived over there. So it's good to hear from you, man.
Islanders are good people, man.
I enjoyed it. I hung out with the Fijians. I hung out with PPNG, the Papua New Guineas. I hung out with all you folks when I lived in Australia. So it was all good. All love, man.
Hey, thank you, my brother. Hey, I shall see you again.
Absolutely. Come on through. Hey, folks, feel free to follow the channel. I let folks get their point across. I make it clear this is by far a MAGA-friendly audience. That's my primary audience. But liberals and folks with, other points of view are absolutely welcome on the program. And free speech is paramount. I do not block and ban folks because they said some shit that I don't like or something that goes against my political beliefs. You get your point across. You get to speak. And it doesn't matter if I agree with it or not. We can hash it out. That's what civilized debate is all about, not blocking and banning people. That does not happen here. You are awesome. Thank you. Wow. Okay. All right, Blue. What does it say? It says Blue Ridge. Let me hold up my tablet once again. My shirt is blocking the letters. Most whites in America feel vulnerable without their guns. Why is that? I hate to throw some racial shit out there, but I got to. T-Dog said most whites in America feel vulnerable without their guns. Let's be clear. Most of the folks in America that are not white have been victimized by white people at one time. So why would the white people feel... Hopefully you're just being sarcastic because whites have always had the most power in the country. So it's like a lion walking around the jungle with an AK. Like, I don't feel safe here. You're the lion. You are the fucking lion. So hopefully that's being sarcastic. Libertarian for life. Okay, fair enough. Damn, I like that, buddy. Thomas, yeah, we don't block free speech here. If you get banned on my broadcast, it's because TikTok didn't like what you said. Because you will never, if you look at my first video, if you go to my profile, my videos are listed there. The first video I have pinned is a viewer cussing me the hell out. Cussing me out. And I did not ban him. I did not take him from the channel. And to this day, he is still invited back up in here. I do not ban anyone for any point they have. That's not to say that TikTok might not get your ass, so still be careful. But you won't have that coming from yours truly. What am I if I don't like Trump or Biden? You are an independent. You're an educated voter. You're just an independent. Thank you for those gloves there. You're just an independent. Ain't nothing wrong with being an independent. There are lots of legitimate reasons to not like Trump. And there damn sure are a lot of them to not like Biden. Look, Trump had his tweets. Biden right now has a terrible economy. Maybe you like DeSantis. Maybe you like somebody else on the left. There's a lot of state your point. State your point. That's all I'm saying. You do look handsome today, Black Widow. Wow, really? Okay, fair enough. Maybe it's the makeup. Maybe it's the eyeshadow. Gang jumping. I don't know what gang jumping is. I have guns. Don't ever bring them with me. Then what good are they? Are you using them just for hunting or a specific purpose? I mean, you're not obviously not using them for self-defense. Best debate channel on TikTok. Where am I getting all these compliments from? All this love. It's a love fest in here. Thank you. Guns make everyone equal, says Todd. No, they do not. And I've heard that comment before. If you don't know how to shoot, if you have no training, if you're afraid to use a firearm, if you're a coward, no, you're not equal. That's why I strongly suggest, I understand the shall not be infringed upon part, but you should have mandatory training requirement to use a firearm. There's a lot of folks. I watch a channel on YouTube called Active Self-Protection. A lot of you guys who are, CCW holders and pro Second Amendment folks, it's not quite Colin Neor, but if you are a Second Amendment supporter and you watch YouTube, you've probably heard of Active Self-Protection. There are folks on that channel all the time that carry a gun and lose their lives because they acted too slowly, they were fearful to use the gun, or something of that sort. So guns do not always make you equal. If you got a firearm and you don't know how to use it, then you're not equal. I've seen people get their guns taken away by unarmed assailants because they were too scared to use it, using it as a brandishing tool or just as a tool to intimidate. So no, it doesn't always make you equal. Candy Coated Cyanide, thank you. I don't even have a gun, says Sealed Child of God. Okay, well, you have that right. How do I join the live discussion? Brain bag at the bottom. You send in a request, and like I said, we don't run from anybody, regardless of your political affiliation or your viewpoint. So if I get the invite, you come in the box, you get to state your point. Small gun or rifle, all anyone needs, says Blue Ridge. Well, the small gun or rifle is all you need in terms of self-protection, but there is that tyranny part. That tyranny part where you're trying to supposedly protect yourself from a tyrannical government. A small gun or rifle is not going to do it. And that's, as a liberal that is pro-Second Amendment and one that carries, I'm a fan of being able to protect yourself and your family. I'm not a fan of the tyrannical stuff, is because if you need a weapon to defend against tyranny, that's when you start allowing citizens to have everything, like belt-fed 50 calibers. You can buy a tank and all this other crazy shit, grenades, and that's when it gets off the rails. That's all I'm saying. Stop using God's name, please. You are not. What the hell? I don't know what that. Let me scroll forward a little bit. AR-15 is a small rifle. Okay, depends on who you ask, but I get your point. 22 more deadly than a 9mm. I would assume that depends on the type of ammunition, not just the projectile itself. Is it a hollow point? I mean, is it a full metal jacket? I mean, I need more questions answered than just that. They are scared that the minorities will retaliate for slavery. It's only 12 to 15% of the country is African American, depends on who you ask. I don't see most minorities interested in retaliating for slavery. It was horrible. It's America's original sin, but I wouldn't want to go around murdering folks based on what my great-great-great-great-grandmother went through. I think that's a bit harsh. You disagree with me, but I still like your style. Thomas, that's the point. We're never going to agree on everything. That's fine. But what I prefer is that we at least have a dialogue. Even in my tiny ass corner of social media, simply by having a dialogue with the other side, we are doing more than Washington is. That's why they're getting nothing done. It's because they don't have a dialogue. When you can see a guy with my name and I make it clear who I prefer to talk to, we're doing more than they do in Washington. We're willing to reach across the aisle and at least have a healthy dialogue. By speaking to you guys, I've learned a lot of shit about the election and things like that. I've also opened people's eyes on a lot of shit from my side. And that's all I'm asking. You may not agree on all of it, but at least we're having a conversation. Okay, folks, I do have to get back to work like the rest of you do. I invite you to follow the channel as I always do. I appreciate that you guys are here. We always had these good calls, good conversations. Actually, the natives and what was done to them was the OG saying slavery was next. I can buy that. That's a legitimate point. And unfortunately, because let me respond to what you said about the Native Americans before I go. Because you often you see that the meme, I think it was Morgan Freeman or Denzel Washington, and they were talking about, well, how do we get past racism? And I think Morgan Freeman goes, stop talking about it. I think that is the biggest farce ever. I think the Native Americans that you brought up is a perfect example of what happens when injustice is imposed on somebody and they don't talk about it. It continues. Bad things don't stop because you keep silent about bad things happening. I brought up the Catholic Church in the earlier argument when they were abusing children. You think if you had not talked about that, that would have just stopped on its own? You need to talk about shit. A lot of folks get pissed off that the African Americans will not let their atrocities die. Well, it's also led to a lot of accomplishments in the African American community. The Native Americans are pretty damn silent about what took place. They don't have large-scale protests. They do some, but nowhere near to the scale of what the African Americans do. And they're not making anywhere near the gains. You don't see them permeated throughout political offices and things like that at all. They're not making any gains. So I agree with you in saying the original sin was against Native Americans, but I do believe the Native American community could have made a lot more advances if they were much more vocal about what took place to them. Get off the reservations and mingle into the American society, because right now they're marginalized so bad that even in the states that they have reservations, their voting power is all but nil. Get out of that reservation shit and mingle in with the society and start making changes from within. That's my spiel. Could be totally wrong to you guys, and I'm totally willing to accept if what I'm saying sounds like bullshit to you. That's fine. I'm just giving you my spiel on it. Okay, folks, I do have to go. Once again, I'll be back tonight at 7 p.m. You are welcome to follow the channel. In fact, I would applaud it if you do. And I look forward to hearing from you guys later. It's your boy Tim, the Handsome Liberal.